Greetings, Darklings, from across the interwebs. It is once again I, the Duchess, Precious Ken, here for the Sounds and Shadows podcast. I have a really exciting guest coming up, and I can't wait to tell you about that, and we're going to jump in. But first, I got an unboxing. If people send me stuff, I'm going to show it on here and talk about it. So I received a package in the mail from Italy the other day from my dear friends Coralix, which ties in well here. But Caitlin and Brandon sent over their new CD, which I had digitally, but now have my lovely signed copy together apart. This is an awesome album. I reviewed it before. Just really cool, I don't know, 90s grungy, filthy goth pop vibes by two living frickin' angels in how just ridiculously attractive both of them are. And also that came along with it, I had ordered from Brandon his other project, The Dark, which I had to buy this because it has a hairless emo goth cat on it. How do I not need that in my life? So check that out. Go see Coralix. Very cool. All right, jumping right into it because I'm so excited. This is an interview that was a long time coming. Somebody that I've been following, have reviewed, have played with before a show, opening for Twin Tribes and them in Detroit, and just somebody that I always hold up as one of the best baritone voices in modern dark wave. It is my pleasure to introduce Jack of the band Panic Priest.
Hi there. How's it going?
What's going on, Jack? Good to see you, my friend. It's been a hot minute.
It's very good to see you as well. Thank you for having me.
I think the last time I saw you was for like a glimpse at Cold Waves. I caught you across the foot and we waved and said hi for a minute and then poof, disappeared into a million people. But
yes, that sounds like Cold Waves.
That especially, yeah, this last year, even more, I had that feeling of, I talked to 2,000 people for like 20 seconds and
right.
Barely anybody longer than that.
It's always nice to see everyone though, but yeah, sometimes
it is goth summer camp. So totally. I want to start out here. Like I said, we'll get into and talk about our history and things somewhat, but I want to start out for maybe some of our fans that aren't as familiar or don't know your work, which everybody should because it's terribly underrated and awesome. Tell me a little bit. You had a moment sometime in the past where you heard something, you saw something, you saw a band, something happened and the spark went off and you said, this is me. This music, this style, doing this is who I am. And tell me about what that is and how it kind of led up to this style of music in particular.
So you mean sort of like going back to maybe like the roots of some of my early inspirations?
Yeah, you were 15, 16, someone took you to a show or you bought an album for the first time and Pretty Hate Machine came on and you were like, bing, that's my shit.
I did enjoy Pretty Hate Machine when it came out. But I think, so I mean, I've made a lot of different music through the years. I've been around. And I love all kinds of different music. I've been in sort of rock punky kind of bands. I've been in electro-y indie kind of stuff. I've done a lot of different things in my time, but my love of 80s sort of goth and synthwave and dark wave and all that stuff, which I have always had a love of, it started actually more from not really watching a show, because at the time I was living in a place where there weren't a lot of shows going on like that. And what really did
Where are you from? I've only ever known you as from Chicago.
Well, it's this could be a long. The short answer is that I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and that I spent a lot of time in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and through lots of weird series of events. And so during a lot of my formative time I was in Albuquerque. So as
Mhm.
far as discovering certain types of music goes, you know
Sure.
what I mean? So basically what really did it for me as far as that's this style of music and my love of it, it came from going to like 80s goth dance nights. It, it,
Nice. Very cool.
it wasn't really so much from watching live music. So my exposure to a lot of the classics and, you know, Sisters of Mercy and Bauhaus and Susie and the Banshees and The Cure and all that stuff, you know, the darker Depeche Mode stuff, all that stuff that I love and we all love really came from me going to 80s goth nights.
Nice.
And I loved going to that was my favorite thing to do. And I started going to them as a teenager and I would sneak out and drive to go to this night. And it was sort of a specifically an 80s goth
Yeah.
night that I was going to. It was on a Thursday night, which I think you could still find an 80s goth Thursday night, like, almost like in every town, you know,
True. True.
because it's like one of those things I think that's been going around on since the 80s and maybe hasn't stopped. So that was really what did it for me. That's what it was, and it was more the people that were showing up and dancing and the way they were dressing and the vibe of the evening and just feeling like something about the music sort of just hitting. Like I said, I love all kinds of music, you know,
Sure.
but there was something about that was really speaking to me. And
Yeah.
so I
I
was,
love that you said that actually, because I think that's something that comes up and we talk a lot on this show or in the Sounds and Shadows group about is, you know, the idea that not everybody came into it just because of the music first. Like they heard the end, it opened their eyes, and all of a sudden they knew every Sisters of Mercy bootleg single or some crap. A lot of people were looking for a place, they knew they were different. There was something, rather it was the aesthetic they were drawn to, whether they were kind of experimenting with gender norms or anything like
right,
that. But it wasn't just that, it was like you said, the people that said it's okay to be weird here.
right.
And
I,
the
I would
clothes
say
and
it's
the
both for me, you know, because
right.
the music that they were playing was obviously doing something for me,
Yeah.
but and you know, but also, you know, a Smith song would come on and I'd be like, oh my God, like, you know, I never heard stuff like that. And I related to it on some level, you know. Um, but but in addition to that is the stuff you're talking about, which
Yeah.
was like also sort of like a community um and also there were just a lot of hot people that I was hoping I'd get to hook up with. I don't know that I
No,
I don't
no,
know that I
I
ever
think that's valid too. And that's kind of what I'm saying is I always try and encourage, hey, when young people and things like that, even if they're not into the music, day one, moment one, walking in the door, if you give them a welcoming, open chance to be themselves, they're going to find the music on their own. They're going to hear it, and This Corrosion is a jam, and
right,
everybody recognizes that, and give them a chance to find that on their own and get into it by opening the door and saying, hey, this is a place where everybody can let their freak flag fly.
right, exactly. And that's always what I've loved about it. Um and you know, even though I've sort of been in so many different types of bands and stuff, a lot of times that was not because I mean, I like I said, I have a real love of all different types of music.
Yeah.
But well, you know, a lot of times the sort of bands I was in and things also they were informed by the other people I was in the bands with, or the
Sure.
people around me that I so um kind of like now that I have the chance to just do everything by myself, I'm like, yeah, I just want to do 80s dark wave. So like, and no
So
one can sit here and tell me not to.
I want to jump a little bit because I think there's something special and always have about Panic Priest, and it goes along with what you're saying. This is a project that primarily you've done on your own. You write all the music, you have a backing track to it, you're doing the vocals, and more importantly, unlike a lot of dark wave, you because you're into a lot of different styles, are an extremely accomplished guitar player. That's
Well,
one of the
thank
things
you.
that blew me away the first time I saw you live is, look, I knew how good the music was, and I knew your voice has this projecting, powerful, rich baritone that is, like I said, top of the game, I think, in the genre. But the other thing that surprised me is you shred, and you
Well,
shred live on guitar. And that's not something you always hear in dark wave or synth wave style music, is someone really going in on guitar. Why was that so important to you? And how do you think that kind of adds and sets you apart in the music that you're playing?
well, like I said, for most of my life, I was playing in a lot of bands, and I I really felt like I wanted. I'm always trying to expand myself as a musician, but at the same time, I I want to lean into my strengths. And
Sure.
because I am comfortable with guitar, and because I've played guitar for a long time, I thought I would be doing myself a disservice if I did not play the guitar.
Right.
I thought I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't make the music sort of vocal centric. And that's not to say I don't want to learn, you know, but going back to that too, what you said about one thing I want to clarify about me, I do a lot in Panic Priest by myself. Yes, probably. I mean,
Sure.
obviously, clearly more than a band, a typical
Right.
situation. But Panic Priest to me is sort of like, I look at it as sort of like a project. Um, and there have been a lot of people involved in Panic Priest, and
Yeah.
I would not have been able to do Panic Priest without them and their
Sure.
help. Because I, especially in the first album, and the transition from me sort of learning electronic music and just figuring out in a way for me to be able to do electronic music in a way that makes sense for me,
Yeah.
and synths and learning synths. And the good thing about having played guitar for such a long time, you can kind of translate that into like almost any instrument in a way,
True.
because I've developed my ear and I know scales and things like that. But electronic music and editing things and doing stuff in Ableton and all that kind of stuff, and programming synths and figuring all that stuff was all completely new and foreign to me when I first started doing Panic Free. So I've had a lot of help, and I also like, since I am by myself,
Yeah.
I like having input from an outside source, but I also like having the control, and to be able to use it or not use it if I don't want to, because ultimately I am the songwriter, and
Right.
therefore I get to decide. Um, on Psychogoria, I did a lot more myself, but it would not sound the same if not for my co-producer Brian Fox. So,
Right.
I'm always collaborating. And then like the Self Control cover, Daniel Belasco contributed to, from
Yes.
Glass Apple Bonsai. So it's I look at it as like a project that it can mean anything. I could do everything myself on a song, or I could one day decide to have a full band with a 10-piece orchestra.
Sure.
I want Panic Priest to have a little bit of flexibility in that way.
Yeah, but I think there is, and we've done this in Amaranth a bit lately, is there is a move going to, especially how touring is now, and it's costly and it's difficult. And the more people you're bringing with you and the more
Yes.
instrumentation, the more complicated it gets. And so a lot of people are turning to the backing track, electronic drums, things like that, for economic sake. I mean, because
Absolutely.
there isn't always another option. And I always really appreciate and like that you aren't one that's just going to hit play and kind of get up there and karaoke your own song with it behind. To me, the way that you bring in your performance, that guitar and whatnot, makes you a vibrant, integral part of what's going on that makes it feel live.
Well,
So,
thanks. Yeah, that was another aspect of me wanting to play the guitar live too. It sort of adds that, as you say, sort of live element to it.
yeah,
However, I think that there's no right or wrong way,
Right.
or a
No,
way
no,
that's
it's
more valid than another on how to do something.
yeah,
And this goes to what you're saying, like it's very hard. I mean, it's hard to be an artist economically,
right.
unless you won the lottery or you have some kind of a fund, which hey, good for you. But if you don't, then you got to do whatever you got to do to make it sustainable. And so,
And
I
engaging.
love, I love, I love when I see bands with a bunch of awesome, huge analog synths
Yeah.
and all that kind of great stuff, and good for them. But I've never been a purist, because the way I look at it is that um you could it's awesome if you love that stuff, and it's great to love analog synth, and there's an art there.
Sure.
But you could become borderline classist almost if you're sort of poo-pooing artists that have to do it another way for different reasons that
You can become a record store nerd,
yeah,
where you're like, if it wasn't original 180 gram vinyl,
yeah.
then it's just bullshit,
Which is funny to me too, because a lot of the people back in the day that were making these kinds of records and doing stuff like that, they would have taken any shortcut they could have got.
Oh yeah.
They
And
weren't using these instruments because that was convenient back. It wasn't. There was no if they
there was no alternative. You had to carry that freaking Moog
right,
up
which
3
is
flights of stairs.
right, which is why you see so many of those artists that sort of were back in that day using computers or doing like that.
Right.
Because it was never about some sort of fetish.
It was necessity, right?
Yeah, it was about trying to make things sound good, and however that happens.
I, on the other side of it, we've gotten rid of all our amps, and it's because I'm lazy as fuck and don't
Oh
want to
yeah,
carry things.
yeah. I don't want to carry a fucking amp anymore. Fuck that shit.
Screw that. All right.
I'm so done carrying amps. Yeah, when I record in the studio, I use amps. Yeah.
So I want to jump ahead here, because speaking of vinyl, I just got a while back the new vinyl of the album you just mentioned, Psychogoria, and you did something a little different where you had the vinyl itself released on Midnight Mannequin, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And absolutely beautiful. I love that this got that, because I can be a bit of a vinyl nerd too. And to me, there's a process towards taking out of the liner, putting it on, dropping the needle down. There's something sexy about that.
Absolutely.
And this record was such a amazing evolution and a step forward. And all right, by the time this interview comes out, the cat will be out of the bag. So I can say this right now, you don't even know this yet, but I broke my best of 2022 into parts where I kind of had like post-punk goth, more organic together, dark wave, synthwave. And your album is #1 synthwave, dark wave album.
Oh wow!
Of 2022.
That's an honor. Thank you very much for. I don't know what to say. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the album.
So tell me a little bit about why this one was special. You've had a few albums under your belt and done this now. What was new for this? What was fresh? Why were you excited to do this record and felt like you were breaking new ground?
Well, so it's weird because like a lot of this record I wrote during the actual like real lockdown,
Sure.
like at home. There were a few songs that I had started before that, but a lot of the writing was happening then, and I realized there was a couple things that were happening, because I was also putting out Second Seduction at the same time. And when Second Seduction was coming out during this time, what was interesting is that so many things about Second Seduction seemed to be resonating with people during that time.
Yes.
For whatever reason.
Well, the single from it and the video and everything, I remember you had that great where you had people send in videos and made them a part of your video.
Yeah. But the song, and that's true. But the song itself I had written like, a year before that.
Right.
So Lonely City we're talking about.
Lonely City,
But
yes.
and the words were just oddly, like, really sort of,
Perfectly for that moment. It was like you had a time machine.
it was odd. It was an odd thing, and it was a cool thing. But then the irony is that as I was actually in that situation writing, my reaction as a writer was completely different. I wasn't writing another Lonely City. I wasn't writing songs like that. I was sitting at home with a lot of nervous energy and a lot of uh, craving stimulation and
Yeah.
craving all these things, physical touch, stimulation, going out. I was craving those 80s goth nights.
Right.
I was craving needing that. I'm the kind of person where um I get in trouble when I'm bored.
Right.
I need to not be bored. So it's
No,
just
no,
the way
I
I am.
get you 100%. I'm an extroverted person too. And as I've gotten older, I'm 45, it isn't as big a deal. I don't need to go out all the time. I'm not going to bars and such.
Sure.
But it hit me during the beginning of the pandemic for the first time in forever that I get so much of my energy from little interaction, from seeing people, from just saying how's your day and going through, and all of a sudden, for the first time in forever, that was completely denied to me. I wasn't
Right.
going up to the grocery store,
And we all
and
experience that at the same time. And it's a wild thing. And we're all going to be
yeah,
unpacking this and unraveling this for a long time. But I guess what I noticed is that as I was writing this album, Psychogoria, I couldn't keep my head in a super depressing state. I couldn't. I wrote some depressing songs. I wrote some actually really depressing songs, but I couldn't. I found myself not having the emotional headspace to spend a lot of time with them because I was already like that. So I was sort of replicating the world I wanted to live in a weird way at that time. And
sure.
you couple that with all the horror movies I was binge watching and sort of thought it would be fun to sort of like add that element
Element.
to it because that's a part of me and that's one of the things that I've always loved. So and then I think I did some different things because I had the time to sort of experiment with some different sounds. And I never really want to make the same album twice in a row.
Sure.
Maybe I'll make a similar type of album to Second Seduction one day,
Yeah.
but I don't like sort of following up with because that will make me bored as an artist
Right.
too. Yeah.
No, I think that's great, and I feel that a lot. I'll tell you one that for me in particular, and I remember I called this out and put it down here, but you won Dark Scene single of the month for I'm trying to remember when it came out, but one of them, but for the track Angel Steel. And there is just something about that song. I play it all the time and it really resonated with me and hit me. And I'm kind of curious, was there anything behind it or kind of a story or feeling that song in particular you were trying to express or get out?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say in a lot of ways that song's probably the most personal or introspective or a little not that I hate to use the word deep because to me
Sure.
even the fun songs like they
There's a
still
reason, there's a meaning. Sure.
there's something personal there still to me and it's still an important emotion for me.
Yeah.
But this one in particular was I was sort of honestly writing it about someone that was very very close to me at the time.
Hmm.
And they were going through a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
personal stuff that is personal.
Sure. Yeah.
And I I sort of wrote it about them in a way,
Sure.
sort of like an encouraging reminder of sort of trying to take control of your own sort of like destiny or your own
Yeah.
path in the face of things that try to hold you down or try to hold you back, which sometimes can be the people you love, or they could be people that love
Often. Yeah.
you, or they could be your better angels or whatever. That's the play on words with angels steal
I
and the
like
time
that.
that
Yeah.
they steal. And then as time went on, I sort of realized that I was also kind of talking to myself directly, because there's never really one meaning to a song for me. So, um, and sometimes a song, not to get too metaphysical here, but sometimes a song will almost reveal its meaning, its personal meaning to me later.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I love
and
that.
and so then I realized that in a lot of ways, Angel Steel, I was kind of also that it was something I needed to hear and I needed to tell myself as well.
That's so freaking, I absolutely love, because you're right. I don't need, when I'm doing these interviews, to be like, so I was buying a 7 Up at 7-Eleven at 3 p.m. on Tuesday. It's more just about the feeling. And I love the idea that you kind of wrote this song to say to someone else, I saw you or I heard you, and needed to kind of, I don't know, give them that energy or that encouragement. But then later on, you needed that same speech and you went back to that song and kind of heard it for yourself in that same moment that you needed
That's kind
to
of
hear it in
exactly
that
what happened.
encouragement.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so freaking cool. I love it. And I don't know why, but there was something about that song. Maybe I needed that encouragement in that moment or something. And that's what I was taking away, or the energy I was hearing from it.
Well, I tend to write sometimes intentionally a little open-ended because I do want people to be able to insert themselves and kind of abstract their own meaning.
Of course. Yeah.
Um, but but it's kind of like an emotion, and a feeling, and that's where Angel Steel, that's where that emotion came from. And so I'm glad you like the song. I mean, I'm glad people are liking the song, and I wanted it to be sort of, with the thing is I was playing around with it being more of a fast-paced song
Mhm.
because I that's kind of the thing where I like to experiment a little bit. I've always liked songs that are like a little melancholy or have a little bit of a melancholy feel to them, or maybe
Sure.
some kind of deeper emotion, but it's still kind of like fast paced and still like kind of catchy, kind of, it feels uplifting, even if it's a little bittersweet.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what I was going for with that. So I think Corinne is amazing at doing that. And their music always kind of gives me that feeling. Um,
In general, they're just, and I would say that, like, I almost sometimes, I, as a music reviewer, will kind of hear songs or bands in colors. And I would say that Panic Priest to me is a very vibrant, deep, like ultraviolet, and where Corinne is the best lavender pastel, but like
sure. Yeah, yeah, I could see
somewhat
that.
in the same vein, but just kind of a different way, a different hue or
Right.
shade. So I love that you made that comparison.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways that was so I think subconsciously, because I listened to them a lot,
Mhm.
eventually I listened to my friends a lot, and their
Sure.
friends. And eventually it's gonna like sort of filter through you.
Yeah.
Um, and I like that, because I have my trad goth influences and all that stuff, but
And your shoegaze ones. I
it's
always
not
hear that
about
from you too.
consciously sitting around and thinking about something and trying to emulate it.
Right.
That's different. It's about sort of absorbing, and also your own personal life experiences and things like that, and your own sort of musical uh repertoire, or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
and then sort of giving space away from it, and some silence away from it, and then sort of letting it distill, almost like distilling it, like you're making a, well, here's some tequila, and then letting it, and then refining it and just letting it sort of come out in a way like that. That's kind of how I try to um
Approach your songwriting or
and
process.
yes, and influences and things like that.
Yeah. All right. So as we're kind of coming up to part one here of the interview, I want you to take a moment and tell people about, we're starting out in 2023. What can people be excited for from Panic Priest? Whether it's some shows that you have in mind, maybe if there's a festival or something that you're excited for, or is it new music that you're going to be releasing? But if we had this discussion January 2024 and we were doing another interview, what kind of things will we be talking about that you worked on or did during the course of 2023?
Sure. Well, I'm hoping to be doing some great shows. I have a few fests lined up, things like that. I'm very excited for that. I'm probably not going to be releasing any kind of massive body of work like I did with Psychogoria
Sure.
because it takes me
You
a
just got
long
done
time.
doing that.
Yes, it takes me a long time to do that. It's a long
Yeah.
process. But I may be releasing another cover song, which
Okay.
in the next year. I used to sort of be not against, but very hesitant to do cover
Sure.
songs or too many cover songs as a songwriter. But lately, I'm really sort of excited by it artistically in a way that I haven't been before. So I have another one I'm thinking about doing, and then I'm working on a couple of videos. So I'm hoping to have some videos out for around Psychogoria this next year. And I'm contemplating, I haven't decided yet, but like I said, there's some deeper, darker, sort of depressing songs that I was working on that then make it to Psychogoria. So I may be releasing those as demo. I've thought about just saving them for a future album, but I think it might be kind of fun to do some kind of special little, it would be a smaller release and it would just be for the people interested and also to hear the more sort of home recorded versions of things. So I may be releasing some demos in some format, which I haven't
Very
decided
cool.
yet.
Have you ever
And
thought about, I know you just said you kind of think of Panic Priest as a project and you've had different people work on it and different people. Do you ever think about just that because you have wide musical interests, doing another project like under another name or kind of to let out feelings of another style or something?
actually, I have. That's funny that you asked me that because nobody's ever actually asked me that.
Well, I
Um,
am a serious reviewer and interviewer.
yes, you are.
So
Yeah,
tell me about it then.
I've thought about it before. Sometimes I'll have a great rock and roll song pop out of me, and and it's something that I've always had sort of an inkling for, and
Because you
it
can
just would
shred.
not. It just would not. Sometimes they pop out of me, and I'm like, oh, maybe I can kind of shape this way. That I'm like, nah, this just isn't going to work on a Panic Priest album, you know. So who knows? Maybe I'll do some kind of a rock and roll album, but maybe it'll just be like a uh, a home recorded thing, and maybe the thing is I don't write those kinds of songs very often much anymore.
Sure.
But if they just pop out, sometimes the song just pops out of you, you know. Um, and if enough of them pop out of me, maybe I'll just release it under some kind of other little name, and I would
Yeah.
mention it on the Panic Priest page and all that kind of thing.
And you never know too, like you said, heck, the world happened like you had this prophetic vision or what have you, that like we were all going to go to lockdown and that's going to happen. Who knows what will happen next or the next emotion that'll hit you and where that's going to drive your songwriting process.
Well, right. And I like to, I never want to like limit myself, you know, as far as what I can do. And um because ultimately I write songs and I make music because I have to, as an artist, do that. And if
Yeah.
I don't do that, I literally wither away and die. And which was, and I also need to perform. And as much as, and I'm not trying to, this isn't a I don't want to like get too bogged down in like it's a life path, and it's something that I've chosen, and it has a lot of in a lot of ways it's like a sacrifice in some way, you know.
Sure.
But I've learned that it's something that necessary for me to do for my mental health and for my well-being. And that was something that was very challenging during the lockdown, not being able to play any shows, not being able to do that.
Yeah.
It was very, very hard. And so because of that, I'm doing it for myself, but I'm also doing it because I need to share it and I need to sort of have that give and take
Yeah.
that makes
I
music
think a
so
lot of artists
general.
feel that and went through that during this, that you do this because you don't have a choice. Like you said, you need to write music. It is a core concept of who you are. But at the same time, a lot of people are going through that emotion, and maybe the way that you express it or the way that you put on matters a lot to other people, you know. And I think the video you kind of talked about, A Lonely Place, was one of those where just a song in the right moment at the right time that invited other people to be included and involved in it was something we didn't know we all needed, and then it turned out we did. And I think that's why that resonated with so many people.
Well, and I'm still a music fan, you know, so it's music's important to me.
Yeah.
In that way still. You know, and so yeah, thank goodness for music, right?
So this has been, I want to pause us for a second here, because this has been part one on the YouTube version of the interview with Jack of Panic Priest. So if you want to see the full interview, you can go to our Patreon page, and we're going to have the full version. We're going to delve deep, get into some more discussion with Jack. But I hope that you got a great glimpse into some of the process and songwriting from Jack on this. And I would love, because we discussed it, we will spin out here from the new album, Psychogoria, to the song Angel Steel. And I hope you join us for the full interview. But it has been a wonderful discussion with you, Jack. Please look for us there. Like, subscribe, follow if you want to see more interviews. This is important. And everybody out there, keep it dark, y'all.
Shadows to shut you up and feel like nothing matters. A simple time, a simple life in tatters, to lead you blind and deal with other matters. Follow the signs to heal, they left you shattered. Borrow the time, the angel. Right to the marrow, and just enough to bleed away the shallow. A distant place could make it hard to swallow. Without a trace, you lead your own tomorrow.